Welcome to Future Customer Value, where global thought leaders share their career-defining moments.
Welcome, everybody, to the new episode of Future Customer Value. We got a super exciting guest today. I'm really excited to have Jan Young on the show. Jan, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I love every conversation I have with you. So it's fun to record one too.
We finally are recording one. It's been much needed. We could probably parse out a lot of snippets from prior conversations and have another B-reel, B-sides here. Well, for our guests who are not aware of who Jan Young is and the incredible work she does, I'll give a quick intro into her career. Jan Young helps heads of CS become VPs and get a seat at the executive table. Jan's also an award-winning leader. She's incredible on LinkedIn. If you don't follow her, you should. And she posts awesome content every day about our industry and what's going on. She's also served as VP of Client Services for 2 successfully exited startups. So operator turned advisor and subject matter expert in the space. And I think one particular area, which we'll dive into in our conversation, Jan has coached many and advised many founders, startups, CS leaders on how to increase revenue, go-to-market alignment, customer advocacy. It's not just about CS, right? It's about how do you drive a customer-centric approach to create more value. And there's a whole career that underpins that, which I won't go into. We'll focus on the most recent components here. But Jan and I met through LinkedIn. We also met through an incredible group led by Gemma at CS Angel. So we've had the privilege of connecting through numerous channels, which I'm really grateful for and excited to dive in here. So Jan, anything you want to cover that I didn't in your intro before we go into the story?
No, that's fine. Let's move on to all the meaty stuff that we like to talk about. Yeah.
Love it.
This podcast is brought to you by Foresight, a full-service value realization platform designed to help you unlock growth in every single account. For more information on Foresight, please email them at info@gainforesight.co. That is info@gainforesight.co. And they'll be in touch.
Well, let's dive right in. And one of the stories I want to start with here is earlier on in your career. This is actually the company that launched your CS paradigm and CS journey. Was the company now known as Ubiquity. And back in the day, you were an individual contributor for the company doing entertainment tech. And it was a video on demand category, a new category at the time.
Yeah.
And so talk to us about what was one of the key challenges that the company had in their go-to-market. And I think this is really fascinating for the audience because it is a customer problem that the company had to innovate how it goes to market to truly solve the real problem. So I won't give it away and take your steam away, but talk to us about what was the issue there and how did you sort of navigate that?
Right. Well, I'll preface it by saying I hate ads. I avoid advertising whenever I can, right? But when you think about how you're going to pay for content, would you rather be ad supported or pay outright? There's a lot of folks who would prefer ads. And frankly, the content providers that I was working with, I was their strategic advisor, essentially. They needed a way to monetize the video on demand content. They were being required to put their content on the video on demand platform as part of their contracts, but they were going with minimal amounts because they couldn't monetize it. There was really no way to insert the ads. And there were a lot of companies who were doing a lot of disjointed things and nothing really worked well together. And so I understood that this was an issue. And in fact, for our company, what we did was we were taking in the metadata and the video content and distributing it out to all these different platforms, making it easy for them. But they were only doing minimal amounts of content for us to distribute. And we were never going to be able to grow ourselves until we solved this problem for how they would monetize it. So I knew it was intrinsically attached and that by helping the customer do better, that we would then do better. And I always talk about that intersection between the customer and the company. And it's exactly that. Like from the very beginning, I saw that connection and felt like that was important to serve both the customer and our company. So yeah, I got involved in industry work groups, basically co-founded an industry work group with another person who also saw that issue. And we literally just put together, I mean, you could say we put together a white paper, but really we gathered the community to start talking through and identifying where all of the problems were in the whole workflow. And by doing that, then people could solve for it. And so it was everything. It was everything on the content side with the advertisers, everything, all the silos within all these large content companies, to everything on the delivery side, in terms of all the platforms it was being delivered to, and the way that everyone wanted to be their own unique, have their own unique solution for how they were going to insert ads. Well, that didn't work. We needed to have new standards. We created new standards for the industry, you name it. We really kind of went through and identified problems and solved the problems and pointed out the problems that then others could come in, companies that could create products and ways to solve for it, and then they could also monetize. So it really changed the whole industry.
Wow.
But that was what it took. Right? It took all of those changes in order for companies to be able to monetize their content on these platforms. And without that, we wouldn't have had on-demand content, because there was no way for anybody to make any money at it. And you can't afford to stay in business if all you have is costs, right? You have to think about how you're going to counteract those costs. So yeah, I mean, it was gratifying, even though now we have ads on content. Don't really love that, but it was gratifying to be able to see the explosion in content that was available, on the platforms because of that. So yeah, that was, like I say, I'm OG, I was first around during the .com days, and I was first around during the on-demand days.
On-demand days. And also the customer success, customer value days are beginning as well. So
from the exactly, because from the very beginning, if you're not delivering value, if you're not providing value, well, then why do they use your product? They're not going to. And so our company was able to actually expand our revenue from 2 million to 30 million in terms of in terms of what we were doing, in terms of just supporting on the content side. That wasn't even on the platform side and all of the operators that we were delivering to, because there was money on that side as well. But just on the content side, then we expanded from 2 million to 30 million over 8 years.
That is incredible and speaks to the power of frameworks and having a structured way for your customers to understand the problem. And I would love to dive into that deeper. A couple quick questions is, how long did that take you? How was that working group, white paper, all the various initiatives you had from inception of the idea to actually seeing change in the industry? Was that 2 years, 5 years, multiple years, still ongoing?
We were pulling people together in the community to each identify their part, right? And so then it was basically, we there was an organization that we were working through, and I just kept pulling people in because of where I was in the industry. I knew people who were other vendors like we were. I knew people who were creating standards. I knew who all the content provider folks were. I knew who people on the delivery side. And so I basically just did a lot of outreach and just said, hey, and just pulled people in. Said, I think you know something about the problem here. I think you know something about the problem there. And I just got everybody to contribute their part, their understanding, so that we could get the full picture. Once we had the full picture, then it was like documented. Then everyone could say, oh, now that I see the full picture, I can solve for this part. And then everybody could solve for their part. And that's how we then created the ecosystem. So the white paper itself and getting all the community together, that was about a year. But then after that, it took time to sort of build it out. But, heck, you knew what you were building towards. Before, it was all this separated, not coordinated, solutions that weren't taking off. There was also even, even before that, they had standards that were like, these are our pie in the sky, standards that, all equipment should work off of. And it, solved for everything that they could imagine, except that it was so divorced from and so separated from from the current standards that all of the equipment ran on, that no one could adopt that. And so what we also did then was came up with a new version of the standards
Oh,
that
wow.
still worked off of the sort of legacy standards, but said, modify it in these following ways. And then that was also sort of a bridge in which people could use then those standards and sort of get it done, so that even if you're using the legacy standard equipment, there was a way for you to participate. Because you really, this is about inclusivity as well. When you
Yes.
think about, inclusivity with people, but inclusivity with equipment, inclusivity with companies, you need to think about how to be inclusive to bring everybody in. And when you do bring everybody in, there's more pie for everybody.
That is a very well articulated insight, and I'm feeling that right now in our space, because there are a lot of different paradigms, companies, initiatives that are occurring to help drive more customer value, and there should be a framework, right? There should be a way to galvanize everybody towards one singular understanding of it. So I think that really resonates right now. And one final question there is, in that ecosystem, inclusivity at Ubiquity, was it also, competitors and other solutions who were playing a part? I'm sure they were, but how did you balance the entry of potential competitors and folks that you didn't really want to be bringing along for the ride, or was that part of it, right? This is a problem to solve. We have a part to play. And I guess maybe to clarify that question, how did you define your role of that bigger problem? What part were you going to address and uniquely support? And what did you say was not part of our remit?
Well, and so certainly there were some people in the ecosystem that would have loved it if we had gotten into distributing all the ads and that sort of thing. But that was a very different part of the ecosystem than the content, and working with advertisers who, work right up to the last minute, make lots of changes. There's a lot of different things that happen in the advertising ecosystem. That wasn't really our wheelhouse, right? So it was part of also then understanding who was our customer, what are our products, how are we going to market, where are we best going to serve in the ecosystem. And then we did have some direct competitors, right, that also did the same thing we did. For, we were the big guys on the block, but there were some others around for various reasons why they existed and how they were successful. And but it was important that we all play by the same set of rules, because if they all of a sudden did something different, then we couldn't all agree on the same standards and the same process. And like I said, we went from 2 million to 30 million, right? and they also expanded the revenue. We were all able to expand our revenue, including even the content providers, because then they were advertising and capturing those eyeballs over in the on-demand space, which they weren't capturing before, right? So everybody won by working together. And
Wow.
I guess that was a very instructive experience for me, in the early part of my career. And so I guess that's part of why I believe so much in inclusivity and bringing people together, and, community, and what you can do when you all bring your part to it. I always go back to that stone soup allegory, where, you have this pot, you start with a pot of water and a stone and in it and the water. And then other people are coming by and saying, well, what do you smell? I can't smell it. Like, oh no, you have to add something into the soup in order for you to smell it. It's a magic soup. And so then they, put in the onion, the turnip, the carrot, the
Yeah.
celery, all these different things, and by the end of the day, then you've got this, you have a stew that nourishes everyone, as
Fragrant.
opposed to if everyone kept their own thing. It's like, did you really want to eat that onion on its own? No, but if it's part of this, well, maybe you do, but anyway, but it's part of the big pot of soup, everyone is nourished, as opposed to if you keep it on your own, right? So we're all better off with community. We're all better off with inclusivity.
I love that can transcend industries as well, and take a learning from video on demand or a different time period of technology. What was needed to get that technology out, or not even technology, it was a philosophy, a methodology, and that can be very relevant to us and to a lot of companies, a lot of industries and companies serving those industries. One comment I want to make, then transition to the next question and
Yeah.
story here, is what I've been feeling, I'm curious to your perspective, is that a lot of buyers who are, and let's talk about our enterprise software world, they're buyers and
Sure.
sellers. The buyers of enterprise software in sales or customer success or even support, product management, right? There are tons of solutions out there, but what companies ultimately want is best practices. How should I solve my problem? The technology that you're selling me could be a plugin to solving that problem, but ultimately I need to improve my business. I need practices that are going to help me up level hit my business outcomes. And I feel like a lot of companies are straddling either their product companies or their maybe consulting companies or frameworks and best practices. But if you're a buyer, you kind of need the full picture, right? You need the methodology and you need the solution to support it. And if you have just one in a vacuum, sometimes, you might need the other side. So curious if you have any reactions to that based off of your experiences at Ubiquity. But I've been getting that sense a lot from folks.
Well, let me dig into that because I'm not sure where you're going with it exactly. So as enterprise companies, you're saying that there are products and then there's sort of the methodologies and frameworks to use them. And it's about, and you're wondering in terms of how do they see the big picture to connect them? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah. So for example, a buyer, let's take the Medic example or MedPick, the sales
Sure. Yeah.
framework or sales consulting
Mm-hmm.
framework. So you have CRMs, you have HubSpot, Salesforce products, and then you got this methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And really for them both to be successful, companies had to combine the two. It says we have this framework of sales stages and sales discovery, but we now want to put that into a system to track it. And when you have
Mm-hmm.
both of those together, now it's so much more powerful because you're actually solving a real problem, which is how do we forecast our revenue? Product alone, you may not have the framework. Framework alone, you may not have a way to track the data, but together
Sure.
they can work in tandem to really drive more
Right.
value for the customer. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about Ubiquity, that really hit home for me because it feels like you put those two sides together. You had a solution, but you had a methodology or a
Mm-hmm.
framework or mental model of how
Mm-hmm.
you should do
Mm-hmm.
this. So the customer now says, oh, there's a highway I can go on, great. And there's a fast car I can get into, the product, to
Right.
get to my destination. So
Right. Well, and I think that's also why I've gravitated, even though I've done a lot of different things through my career, why I gravitated to the post-sales motion and customer success is because of that strategic advisor role, right? Which is where you have a vision, where you can see across all these different, it's also, I've been a consultant in so many different roles, and I think of a CSM role or a strategic advisor role as a consultant as well, right? Where you are looking across, all of your book of business or all of your customer base, and you can see what best practices are. And when they're using those best practices, not only when they've adopted and optimized your product, but what that all of those things will help them to achieve their business goals. And so you're guiding them through that and helping them achieve their business goals by using your product and optimizing how they use it. Right. And so in that respect, then I was connecting what they were doing in the on-demand space with what they were doing generally in their business, objectives, what goals they had. And then also I would sort of take my past experience, whether as a project manager and getting into the geekiness of metadata, or I'd once worked in marketing and, sort of had that in my tool belt to then kind of help them in terms of how they would market their content and use metadata, in that marketing effort, and how they would distribute it, how they would, build the categories and optimize then how then their customers, so looking at your customer's customer, right? How their customers were going to be able to find the content and view the content and find what was going to be popular, and also help them to even make certain types of content more popular that they were trying to promote and things like that. So when you understand what your customer needs are and what your customers' needs are, then you can help all of them sort of reach those goals, those endpoints, by advising them the best way of how to use your product. And that's ultimately, especially in the high touch model and in enterprise, what you want to do with your customers.
Absolutely. Then the more you can align with them, the better everybody will be able to action and work towards that same goal too. So I think that's super powerful.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's shift gears here and talk about a more recent experience in your consulting career where you've worked with founders. And a lot of founders who are building products, they want to sell, they want to make their company successful, right?
Yeah.
Talking to one right now. And talk to us about what were some of your realizations working with founders, especially when it comes to post-sales, customer success, churn, right? All of our favorite topics when it comes to this world. And I'll keep it there. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Don't want to keep it.
So once video on demand started to grow up and there weren't as many changes, no offense, but it got a little boring, and I switched over to emerging tech, and so really started to dig into mostly blockchain, a little bit of AI, IoT, some other things. If I had more math and science, my background, I'd be doing quantum computing today. We probably wouldn't even be talking, because that's really fascinating. But basically I started working with founders and started to, because I had so many different tools in my tool belt, advise them everything in terms of what types of tech to use, to achieve their goals, and everything from attracting customers all the way through to how to help them renew and expand, and what types of products to build for that. So kind of advising across the whole journey. But I found, especially, and I know we've talked about this, but I found especially when I talked to founders, that especially for founders who were, had experienced a pain point, saw a solution, and said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build this product that solves my pain point, that I know there must be others out there who have this pain point. I'm going to build this product, this company, and they start from there. And then they ignore the customer after that, because they feel like, well, I know the customer because I'm the customer. And I've heard that several times from founders, like, no, I know the customer. I'm the customer. And I, always had to kind of go back and say, you know what? That's fantastic. That gets you a customer of one. But to stay in business, you need more than one customer. Let's do a little more, fancy footwork out there. Let's go out, talk to some more customers, because we need to get to know more of them. We need to bring more of them in and help us understand really what the pain points are more generally, what sort of products they need, and then, going through all of that. But ultimately, because I really get interested in the post-sales motion, then that's when I decided to just really focus on that portion of the process, I guess I'd say.
Gotcha. One statistic that really stuck with me in our pre-call was that somewhere between 91 and 93% of the company's bottom line was in post-sales, and that was for that particular company, I believe, but could probably map to a lot of companies. I do have
a story about that. Right? Yeah.
And you mentioned 2 people at the company, 2 customer success managers.
Yeah. So one of the things I recommend doing from the beginning is taking a look at, where is your break-even point? What is your customer base? What are the segments in your customer base? And what is their break-even point when you're getting to profitability? So that was the first thing that I did with this one company that I was advising. And then I basically went through and looked at all the different segments, and when they were profitable, how long they would take. I was also looking at the cohorts. And what I mean by cohorts is, you have your year 1 customers. How long do they stick around? And how much money are they still contributing to your bottom line? Cohort 2, the second year, how much are they contributing to your bottom line? So what I was assuming in this case was that if they were in the first year, I would attribute that to sales. Anything after the first year, I attributed to customer success, the post-sales motion that, you know, in terms of revenue. And when I went through and looked at the numbers, I basically it looked like somewhere between 91 and 93% of the company bottom line was attributed to customer success. It was all post-sales, it was all renewals, expansion, all of that. And you know, about 7 to 9% was new logos. And so first I shared this with the founder CEO, and he basically started to argue with me. And he said, well, no, I really think it's closer to 97%. I don't think the whole first year should be attributed to sales. It should be this. I said, okay, 97% of your company bottom line is attributed to customer success. You have 2 CSMs for 200 customers. And that's what your company is now relying on, is those 2 people for your bottom line. And that's when he said, oh, maybe I should pay more attention to this.
Yeah, that's going to be a key moment in this podcast for sure. That story right there, because it's so powerful. That's a philosophy
because you're ringing the gong for every new logo that comes in, and everybody's focused on the new logos, right? But it's really the expansion money. It's the renewals. It's the expansion that actually keeps the lights on.
And it's that keeps lights on, but also I've experienced this in previous companies. Why is the support function, and that's different than customer success, but let's just take support, numbers game, law of large numbers. The focus operationally, internally, is how do we reduce the average time to close a ticket, reduce the cost as much as possible. It's seen as a cost optimization. But that's the company's customers' first line of engagement with the company when they need help. And you're trying to reduce costs as much as possible when they need help. They need you for something.
You want to do it. So you want to do that in constructive ways. So yeah, so let's look at this. First of all, the post-sales revenue, that's where the real hockey stick comes in, because everything that happens to support your customers afterwards, if you can optimize it so that your costs are minimal, but it's still successful, then that's how you get to hockey stick. Because when you look at the 5x cost for bringing a new customer, the 1x cost for maintaining the customer, then increasingly when you're looking at, you know, retention or expansion, or at, you know, when you get to advocacy, you know, the incremental cost when you get to a customer advocate who brings in a new customer, who's most likely to be your ICP and is successfully going to quickly go through the sales process, that is 0.1x compared to the 5x cost for a brand new customer that doesn't know you from Adam. That's 50 times difference in that cost, right? So first of all, just that sort of motion in particular, that is less expensive to get to more money. Then when you look at support or something like that, right? If they're going to stick around, you know, or whatever you're going to learn about what improvements you need to do to your product, that's some great learnings there that also helps them optimize how they're using your product. Right? So yes, you can reduce some of your support costs, and you should if you're doing it in smart ways, not just by cutting out support people and making it harder for people to get support, but from making it so that they don't need that support in the first place, or that there's easier ways to get that support without having to go and call a person. Because if every time you're trying to use the product, you have to call somebody, right? That is not a good use of your or my time. We don't want to call somebody every time we want to do something. We want it to either work, or we want to find the answer quick so we can get back to work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it's all of these things that are preventing the hockey stick, that are all those sort of 1% differences that you can actually do. And if you spend the time focusing on those 1% differences compared to the 5x cost of ringing the gong and saying, oh, we brought a new logo in. Like once you have, some logos, what are you going to do with those logos? How are you going to keep them? How are they going to contribute to that hockey stick? That's the hockey stick you want.
Yeah.
The hockey stick is land and expand. It is primarily expand. This is a subscription business. It's on average 22 months to get to that break-even point where you start to get to profitability. You want to get that down to 12 months if you can, right? But you want to keep your customers, because if not, you're going out and spending at least 5x more on bringing a new logo.
Totally. And there's no such thing as uncontrollable churn, right? Except bankruptcy. You also said this. I'm taking all
Yes,
of this.
that's another. Well, that's the other thing too. You're right. Thanks for reminding me of that. So that's another thing. When I've helped a number of founders, they will often have a whole section of churn that they'll call uncontrollable churn. And there's, and I worked with one company that literally the uncontrollable churn was because they didn't have a relationship with the executive buyer in the post-sales motion. Sometimes not even in the pre-sales motion. So whoever's making the decision, they didn't have a relationship there. So they called it uncontrollable churn because they couldn't control it. That doesn't mean that it's uncontrollable churn. It means that they didn't have a relationship with the executive buyer, the decision maker. That's a task. That's a thing. That's a gap. That's a thing to go do, to go build and create. That doesn't mean you can't control it. Like uncontrollable churn is a company went out of business. You can't control if that company goes out of business, right? That's uncontrollable churn.
Or if it's just the wrong fit customer. And that, I think that might be a hard truth for some folks too, is
I wouldn't call that uncontrollable churn, because why did you bring them in the first place? You can control and say, we're not going to bring in the wrong fit customer, right?
That's a great point.
So that's not uncontrollable churn.
Yeah.
And people will say mergers and acquisitions, that's uncontrollable churn. The odds are against you if the parent company isn't using you and the one that was acquired is. But what that is it's an opportunity to sell again. And you might have a hard time. You might say my chances of winning that sale again is 20% or something, or 10% or 5%. Fine, put that percent on it. But even technically, that isn't uncontrollable. It also isn't very often, right? I mean, unless you're in an industry where there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and then you should know that, because that's an at-risk, situation. You should, call that out ahead of time in terms of it being an issue.
And what I'm taking away from the first story you mentioned about the founder and the 97% is that in order to prevent or to understand what the levers of that churn are, what's happening, also for the expansion, you need to have someone dedicated with a discovery mindset to get in there, especially in high touch motions, to understand what's going on. And you can't leave it to chance. Hope is not a strategy. You need somebody who is trained professional who's able to identify these opportunities and risks through interactions, EQ, IQ together, and product expertise. But ultimately, all of this folds into a resonance and understanding the customer's business. When you can do that, all of these different components of selling at the acquisition or making the recommendation to not go after a particular ICP because it's not the right fit customer, it's not ideal an ICP, right? Or whatever it is. And that needs to be built into your DNA as an organization. And what I'm seeing and feeling, and I'm here learning this from you, is that that's driven a lot by the post-sales organization. That has to be in the first interface with the customer. That's where you're learning everything. But that philosophy of being customer-centric should then pervade everybody. It has to go upstream. It has to go upstream to sales, it has to go more upstream to marketing, because where are all the leads coming from? From the folks who are out there and generating demand. But for whom? And let's make sure that's all connected.
Well, and it's so funny that you mentioned that hope is not a strategy. I was just in the midst of writing a post this morning about, what gets measured gets done. and you think about all the ways in which the marketing and sales motion is completely dissected and measured in every step in terms of what sort of leads are, qualified, and what sort of conversions there are in each phone call and stuff. And then it gets to the post-sales motion, like, oh, we have a couple of metrics, time to first value, maybe some people are measuring launch, like, come on, like, seriously, when you think about it, we can also dissect and measure. And if we do that and we understand how long it's taking to any of these key, activities that our customers need to do, whether it's in onboarding or whether it's in adoption or optimization, those are the key activities that need to be achieved in order to hit renewals and to hit expansions and get to the money, right? Or when you think about voice of the customer, for everyone to be customer centric, we need to bring that voice of the customer in. And yeah, you can do it with a couple of stories, but you also need to measure it. But for this story example, how many people, how much money, how many companies are represented by that, in terms of what this story emulates, right? So you want to be bringing that information back to the company in a very thoughtful way and, with measurement. Right. And so with all of that, then, and I mean, frankly, I know we're not here to plug your tool, but that's why I love your tools, because it not only incorporates the stories and the information, but it also allows you to measure it. You're measuring companies, you're measuring, which people are, which of your stakeholders are, giving you this feedback, and which personas those are, how across how many different companies is this an issue? How many dollars are at stake? What is your white space of opportunity? And then also what is at risk? All of those things are the kinds of things that we need as revenue leaders to bring back to our companies, not only so that we can help our companies. Yeah, we need to keep the lights on and stay in business and get to that hockey stick, but we also need to help our customers. And if we don't bring that information back in a way that our company can use, we don't get to help our customers.
And your company is going to be at risk of surviving. Your company might go bankrupt because your
risk.
customers are not getting.
Yep. But so often as CS leaders, we're there for the customer, like we're so empathetic. Yeah. We want to help our customer. Oh, I can't be a revenue leader because I want to be there for my customer. What? Like, to help and be there for your customer, you have to be a revenue leader.
Yes. They're not mutually exclusive. I think that's been the cardinal sin in all of this, is they are not mutually exclusive. Revenue is a byproduct of value. They are intrinsically interlinked. And if you look at one or the other, you are going to shoot yourself in the foot. Because if you're looking at just sales and not the customer is going to leave you. They have more options now. If you look at just the customer and not the revenue, you won't be valued and you'll be stuck at the bottom, right? And you might get cut, which is happening. But there is a linkage point. And that's why I was bringing up earlier this whole idea of a framework and then and learning from Ubiquity, because that's what it feels like you did, is you connected the internal and external value. What does the market need? How do we get people on the right rails? And let's talk about it in our context. You have executive buyers who don't understand the perception of value, of why they're making a six-figure investment into a sales platform or whatever platform. Okay. You got the company who's saying, we have to optimize their internal metrics and make sure they're using our product. Those are inherently misaligned. You get the alignment at the executive level. They say, okay, we're trying to drive a faster close rate, speed to conversion on our deals. Okay, our tool can help you with that. Great. Internally, you got your CEO and CFO aligned to invest now to make sure they achieve their outcomes, because there's a lifetime value attributed to that, to all your revenue metrics. So there's a whole framework here that is connecting revenue and value. They're not mutually exclusive. And when companies do that really well, they are basing commission off of retention instead of closed won rate, right? All these operational metrics start to change, and I think there's just ample opportunity out there for everybody as we progress down this journey. So super excited.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Me too.
Well, couple last sections here, Jan. I know we're getting close to our time. Is the rapid fire questions. This is an audience favorite, and there's a couple rules to this part of the show. 1 to 2 words each. So I'm going to ask you a question, and in max 2 words, tell me the first thought that comes to your mind. All right?
Okay.
Here we go. What is the best metric of success for CS?
No, NRR.
Worst metric of success for CS.
NPS.
On board with both of those. Most underrated part of CS.
Revenue. Post-sales revenue.
It's a good one. Most overrated part of CS.
Happiness. I'm sorry. I know there's so many people out there who want to be the happiness department still, but nope.
Times are changing.
The times have changed. It's just not about happiness. It never was. It was also for product. It just wasn't about delight. Sorry, I'm over your 2 words. Yeah.
That was worth an extra couple sentences. Current state of CS.
Transition.
Future of CS.
Oh, I should say actually transformation. Ooh. I would say we're in a transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple extra syllables, a little extra.
Yeah.
Future of CS.
AI.
Best CS book or podcast.
Podcast, yours.
Oh, let's go. You're the first person who said that. So let's go.
Oh my gosh.
I might take that part out, but anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you. Best community for CS leaders.
Well, I'm biased there.
Yes, I'll answer this one. Is CS office hours.
Yes. we're changing the name. It's going to be CX Exchange, which stands for Customer Success Accelerator Exchange. And it's meant to be a place where you accelerate your career and exchange ideas.
I love it. That is awesome. And we definitely want to plug that with the audience in the notes so they can see it. Check it out. So we'll end with this, Jan. If you could make one prediction, and this can be a couple more words if you want. We'll keep it to 30 seconds. If you could make one prediction about the future of customer success, where the industry and the function is going, what would it be?
It'll be human-led. It'll be generating revenue for both customers and the company, and it'll be incorporating AI to understand our customers better and just create better efficiencies. Love it.
There's a lot of forces coming together, and I think everybody's trying to figure out what the world looks like, what's effective and efficient. So it's a great answer.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. This was amazing. I loved speaking with you, and I'm glad we made this happen. I'm sure everybody who's listening will also love it. And thank you, Jan.
Thanks a lot. I always enjoy conversations with you, and I'm glad we got to record one for others too.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to round 2 soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Once again, thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by Foresight. If you're interested in learning more, please email them at info@gainforesight.co. That is info@gainforesight.co. Thank you.